I'm still very tired. I have a headache. I'm a little woozy. But let's attempt to get through Weebcon Indy 2025. I guess I need to do a little bit of like a mini history lesson on Weebcon itself, because this requires some explanation. Weebcon is a convention based out of Texas. It's been running for a few years. It's apparently pretty big. I wouldn't know. I've never been. They're starting to try and branch out. And this is something that certain conventions will do. Like Colossal Con is based out of northern Ohio, but there's like a Colossal Con East, a Colossal Con West. And this was the first year that Weebcon was trying to run a show outside of their usual one. Specifically, they were running in Indianapolis. Now, going into this, I actually wasn't sure if I'd be going to it at all. It would be convenient if I was, because it's like a 2.5 hour drive-ish from where I am, depending on traffic. And leading up to it, I wasn't sure if Casey would be going. But eventually realized, yes, Casey's going to be there, so I said, fuck it, I'm going. And it would just be Casey, by the way, not Casey and Kira. This is one of the few times that, like, they don't end up at the same event together. Now, I was initially going to leave a little bit earlier in the day than I did, but I needed to get some things taken care of on the car with some help from my wife. Wound up leaving a little later in the day than I was planning to, which wound up being a bit of a blessing in disguise, because I realized once I got on the highway, my air conditioning was busted. I have one of those cars that if you try just using vent, the air actually ends up making the car hotter than if you just did nothing or had the windows down. So I wound up going down the highway with the windows down almost the whole way. Although before I even got on the highway, I was making a stop by the bank just to have a little bit of physical cash on me. On the way, I see an SUV that got T-boned at this one corner that's I frequently go to when I hit the grocery store. Along the way, more harbingers of ill things to come, like a flatbed that was towing a bunch of busted Cybertrucks. And then I was looking up the path to the hotel/convention center where I was headed, and I was checking what is along the way. And I realized there's a RAX roast beef along the way. It's like just a couple minutes off of the one highway that I'm visiting, that I'm driving down. So I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to stop at that RAX along the way, and Casey will finally be able to eat something from RAX instead of just hearing me talk about it and like giving them a wrapper for one of the sandwiches. So I pull off the road and I eventually make my way to the RAX. And I pull up and I'm seeing red flags immediately. I pull around the restaurant and I'm trying to look inside to see what the interior looks like. And I can't really see anything. The windows are like partially obscured. It's really dark in there. I pull around one side and it almost looks like the dining room isn't set up. Like it's just being used to store stuff. Then I pull around to the drive-through, like menu/speaker. There are a lot of things that are listed as unavailable, but more importantly, there is a notice saying that they're closed beyond 7 p.m. How many fast food places do you know that close at 7 p.m.? But then I also realized why they're closed at 7 p.m. Because right next to that is, these signs are just like printer paper taped to the side of the sign, by the way. Because there's another message next to it that says, tomorrow they're not going to be open at all due to staffing problems. It was shaping up to be that kind of a weekend. So I say, oh well, and I just get back onto the highway. There will be no racks for dinner. And we're going. Eventually, I see, like, sirens up in the distance on the other side of the highway. So, not the one I'm driving down, the one on the other side of the barrier. I think that it's police, but I get closer and I realize, no wait, those are fire trucks. And they are in the middle of the road. I get close enough to see what's going on, and I can see, like, a couple of busted up cars off to one side, toward what would be the left side of the road for them, like, toward the fast lane. On the right side, off of the shoulder, there is a semi that is turned over on its side. It has a trailer attached to it, and the trailer is completely burned up. And this accident was so devastating that they blocked all of the lanes to deal with it. So beyond these fire trucks is just miles and miles and miles of a 3-lane highway that is completely packed full of cars and trucks and what have you. I get to, like, mile 2 of the traffic backup, and I'm seeing cars that are using, like, the emergency turn-off thing to pull off and then go the opposite way and try and find another route. Anyway, I get to the hotel. It's just before the sun has completely gone down, so there's just a little bit of daylight. I am, like, pulling around because you have to, like, sort of go in a circle around the hotel to get to where the parking garage is for it. It's an underground parking garage. And I'm circling past this park that's nearby, which apparently has an event going on. I don't remember what exactly it was, but they were playing some music for it. I couldn't help but laugh because it was just like a bizarre thing to hear while pulling up, but I'm circling the hotel to get to the parking garage, and in the background I just hear bird, 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 the bird's the word, bird, 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 the bird's the word, bird, 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 bird. So anyway, I get into the parking garage. It's unusually full. It's probably from just people, like, being in town for whatever event was going on in that park. I end up parking like 3 levels below, and I have a ton of shit that I need to haul up to the lobby to meet up with Casey. I get to the elevator, go up to the lobby, I walk out, and it is packed with people. And I quickly realized why. So the NBA Finals started the night that I got to that hotel. And the NBA Finals are between the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Indiana Pacers. And I am in Indianapolis, Indiana. So there are all these people at the hotel bar just watching the game. But even beyond that, there are a lot of really bougie looking people staying at this hotel, and I do not know why. Never did figure out why. All I know is they were bougie and they drank a lot. I'm in the lobby now, and I have all of my shit with me. Casey comes down, meets up with me. We also end up running into Mark Whitten while we're down there. Cool guy, somehow just keeps showing up to all of these events that we end up at. The theme for this event, to varying degrees, is going to be disorganization. And case in point, Casey is a guest at this event, and the event never announced that Casey would be there, at least to this point. It is very, 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 very important that you announce guests for these things, particularly if they're going to be doing signings. So since the event hadn't done it yet, while Casey's plane was landing, they decided, fuck it, I'm going to make my own announcement image for Weebcon Indy. And it's just a photo of them in the hotel room with, like, a paint tool saying, like Weebcon Indianapolis or Indiana or something like that. I'm gonna be here. That was the announcement that Casey was there, and it happened the day before the event, only on Casey's socials. So we get all of my shit up to the room, and we're just trying to figure out what to do as far as food. And we say, you know, fuck it, let's get some rallies. Weirdly enough, I drove past a Rallies all the time when I was going to college classes. And yet I've never actually eaten at Rallies. Or Checkers, it's also known as. And we just got something really basic, like chicken tendies, fries, and they had cherry coke as an option, so we did go for that. And then after that, I start unpacking my game consoles, because Casey had to like pack really tight for this. Kira usually has the big ass luggage that's used to like haul around the prints and the markers and all that shit. Casey was kind of just working with basically a carry-on and a backpack. So they couldn't bring any game consoles with them. I had a car, and I decided, fuck it, it's my turn to do that. So I brought a PS2, a PS3, and a PS4. And the first thing that we hooked up was the PS2. Casey wound up hacking the TV to display our games with, I won't say no difficulty, because it was a bit of a struggle at first. And it was also like kind of screwy how you had to go from displaying a game on the TV to just displaying live TV. But we got it figured out. And once it was figured out, there was like practically no delay on this television. So I will bring like a certain selection of games with me. Like, I'll usually remember to bring like at least one skateboarding game if Casey's not doing it. I brought Pro Skater 1 and 2 for PS4. But I also will bring some kind of off-the-wall games just to like see how Casey reacts to them. And one game that I brought was the PS2 version of Vampire Knight. For those who don't know, Vampire Knight is a rail shooter based around a couple of vampire killers. It's from the same people that did House of the Dead. And in fact, had some mechanics introduced in it that would wind up becoming like pretty standard for House of the Dead and rail shooters in general. It also has some really bad voice acting.
He deserved it.
You still can't forget about her.
What do you know? What I have lost. The pain I have suffered.
There's no need to thank us. We're here too. They're coming.
We kind of just do that throughout the night, watch a bit of South Park, and then just fall asleep. And that leads us into Friday. I woke up unusually early on Friday. We didn't really need to do anything until like afternoon. But we hear a knock on our door at about 9:15 in the morning. It's Housekeeping. I've never been to a hotel where Housekeeping shows up that early. Also keep in mind, we're on like floor 15 or 16 in this hotel. How soon did Housekeeping start doing this? So it's from our room in the hotel that I get a decent view of what everything looks like. So I am looking out from our window, and I can see the convention center. I can also see Lucas Oil Stadium kind of off in the distance. So I'm looking down at the convention center, and I'm realizing there's a crane right next to it. And I can see dudes moving around on the roof of the convention center. Is the center itself under construction as this event is going on? Like, is it a different part of the convention center than what we're in? I couldn't really tell. But we are going about getting ready in the morning for shit that we're doing later. Also playing a couple video games. It's about 11:30 in the morning. The event is going to start in a couple hours. The convention still hasn't announced that Casey is going to be there. So I'm also looking down at a parking garage that is really nearby. The top is blocked off, but I'm also looking at like the open spaces, and I'm seeing these like tire tracks, and they're going in circles, and I'm like, did someone do donuts on the top level of that parking garage? And if so, with what? Anyway, it is time for us to go down to the lobby and then make our way toward the event space. Now, here is the thing about the layout for this event. Instead of just doing everything in the convention center, which is probably what they should have done, they had, like, a portion of the exhibit hall. It wasn't like the entire exhibit hall space that the convention center has available. It was like maybe a third, a quarter of it. And there was just like the one door in and out of it. Like off in the corner, kind of near where the front of the like main entrance of the convention center is. But a lot of people wouldn't be coming through that way. Instead, they would be coming across a skywalk. And this convention center is connected to a couple different hotels by multiple skywalks. And the one that we were in was the JW Marriott. From where we were staying in the JW Marriott, we would go down to the second floor, then have to walk across this hallway, go past this Starbucks, and then go onto this skywalk. The skywalk takes you over a roadway, and then you end up in a hallway attached to the parking garage that I saw from my hotel room. You keep following that, and then you end up at another skywalk, and that takes you from the parking garage over a road into the convention center, and from there you have to go down an escalator and then make a right to get into the exhibit hall area. And just the exhibit hall area. Because most of the panel spaces and like workshop spaces and artist alley and the game room space were back in the hotel. So if you wanted to go in between the two, you had like a 5 to 10 minute walk. Also, part of the skywalk, not climate controlled. So you'd go across one skywalk and it would be air conditioned, across another skywalk and it wouldn't be. We are heading down toward the exhibit space for the first time, and keep in mind, we don't know that there is only that one door to get into the exhibit space. So we start walking down this other hallway, and it keeps going and going, and we're noticing fewer and fewer people are around. There are people who are like walking from this direction, and I think they were at just a different attached hotel. We're seeing the like official convention center signs that say like Exhibit Hall A, Exhibit Hall B, Exhibit Hall C. But like Exhibit Hall C and D and onward were not being used for this event. So we end up at the end of the exhibit hall space, and the path angles off to the right, and there's nothing there. Although there is a sign in the distance that says cosplay meetup space. So we're like, wait, what, huh? Where do we go? So we walk all the way back, and we end up at some desks, and they're like, oh yeah, the entrance to the exhibit hall is just those doors off to the side. We eventually get in, and we're starting to like see what the main exhibit hall space is like. It's basically dealer's room plus people signing stuff. All of the dealers are in the middle of the exhibit hall, and then the desks for everyone who's doing signings goes in kind of like a U shape around them. And there were an absurd amount of guests for this, particularly considering that it's the first time this event is running in this particular location and in this particular space. I mean, I know this event space has hosted large events before. Gen Con takes place at the Indianapolis Convention Center, and that's huge. So it was just bizarre that they only took like this space and then like maybe a panel room or two adjacent to it. We start like kind of wandering around the exhibit hall, just seeing what kinds of dealers there are. And then we eventually make our way to our space. We're setting up, like we're looking at the vendors that are across from us. And we're seeing like a person selling prints. And then we see a person who's like selling a different variety of prints. Wedged between that vendor and another vendor who's selling like body pillows and pins and stuff like that, there is this tiny little booth for patio enclosures. For those who don't know, patio enclosures is very much not the sort of thing you would expect to see at an anime convention. It's the kind of thing you would see at like an auto show, like a gardening expo. And I'm just wondering, did this person know what kind of event they were going to? If there's a U shape for the desks, Casey is kind of like in the middle of the bottom of the U. Maybe like a little off to one side. To their left is a setup for Ryan Bartley. They're Ray in Neon Genesis Evangelion. They've done Demon Slayer. And relevant to you, Blondie, they were in Tales of Arise as, I don't know how to pronounce the names, Cole, Lagil, is that even close? And on the other side of them is Ray Chase, who was Gendo in Neon Genesis Evangelion. He was Jeeble in Bloodstained, and he was, what's his name? Cinder in Killer Instinct. Everybody is getting their shit set up, and a lot of the people who are doing autographs have, like, these standee signs that will be, like, a few feet out from their booth, just as, like, a way to get people's attention. So, Ray Chase has one of these, like, standee poster sign things, and every time somebody walks past it, it falls over. Like, something about the bottom of it isn't being drawn taut so that it'll actually, like, stay rigid in place. So it's wobbling all over the place. Eventually, they just said, like, screw this, we don't know how to deal with this, and it was just kind of, like, leaning against part of his autograph table for the first day. Another thing about the setup, they took, like, this yellow and red tape, and they were taping off snake-like lines on the ground for, like, people to stand in line for at autographs. But the lines were very close together. Like, if you have, like, anyone who is A, not skinny, or B, wearing a bulky cosplay, these lines are not going to work. And in fact, most people just ended up standing in straight lines at people's booths anyway. That being said, it wasn't that way for all of the booths. Like, Casey's autograph table had no lines put down at all. Finally, around, I think it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the doors opened to the public. VIPs, who at this convention were known as VIWs, very important weebs. I know, I'm thinking the same thing. So the doors are opened, autograph tables all set, and at this point, the con still has not announced that Casey is there. What kind of impact does this have, you might ask? Well, within the first hour of the floor spacing being open, no one came to Casey's booth because no one knew where they were there. And in fact, throughout the weekend, when people did come to the booth, they would come up and one of the first things they would say is, I had no idea you were here. And another thing people would say is, man, if I'd known you were here, I would have brought my Ava stuff to get signed, or my Shin Megami Tensei copy to get signed. This is why you need to announce people well in advance. Another hypothetical scenario, let's say there are people out there who will look at the guest list and use that to determine if they go to an event. Is there someone out there who, if Casey would have been listed properly, like on the site and in the announcements, like a month in advance, so that allows enough time to plan the trip, they might have actually gone and gotten something signed by them. Outside of, like, local people, anyone who travels for this, they plan that shit way in advance, so they need to know about this, like, ASAP. So while that's going on, a line is forming for Ray Chase. And Ray had this system he would use, because there weren't official autograph signing times. He would put this little note on his desk that says, I will be back, or I will be signing at this time. And he will just let the line form, go through the line, take a break, put another note for when he'd be back. Line would gradually form again, and he would just do this throughout the whole weekend. The first time he did it, though, he was late. He was really late. And his line was getting so absurd, it was backing all the way up and blocking out the patio enclosures booth. I felt so bad for this guy at this patio enclosures booth. Like, for the record, there were a couple instances where someone actually talked to him and, like, showed interest in patio enclosures. And at least one time, it was, like, the parent of someone else who was attending the event. So after a little bit, Casey and I are like, I'm getting kind of hungry, or, like, I'm getting kind of thirsty. Usually when you do these kinds of events, there's, like, volunteers that will come in and check on you every now and then. We saw one volunteer, and it seemed like they were really being stretched thin with the amount of people that they were checking in on. There also didn't really seem to be any security. So a lot of, like, the voice actor guests were having people from adjacent tables looking out for them. I remember one time, Ryan Bartley and the person running the table with them had to go, so I just wound up watching their stuff for a little bit. So we are wandering around. In the dealer space, there are 2 food vendors at opposite corners. Neither of them have anywhere to sit. There's a Mexican food place, and then there's like a Chinese/curry place. And we weren't really in the mood for those, so like we just wanted basic-ass snacks. So we go out, and we remember passing by what looked like a snack bar when we were trying to figure out where the opening for the exhibit hall is. We walk past it, no one is there. The stand is closed. I'm like, you guys are leaving money on the table by not doing anything with this. I go further down, because I remember passing another snack place. That's also closed. We get on the skywalk and go back to where we remembered seeing the Starbucks. It's also closed. They just don't want attendees' money, I guess. We do eventually find some snacks, but we also realize it's getting later in the day and the con still hasn't announced that Casey is there. So at this point, I'm trying to think, like, okay, if the con is not going to say Casey's there, we need to make it known Casey is there somehow. I have a stack of Post-its with me. We usually use those to, like, write a note on the autograph table that says, like, be back at this time for signings. Something like that. I just start writing, Casey Mongelo is here. Write a couple other rolls. And Casey sees I'm doing this and does, like, a chill chuck doodle across the top of it. And I just start dropping these or slapping these on signs as we're walking around the event space. I slap one on a sign saying where main events is. I slap one on a handrail in one of the skywalks. As you're going to the escalators going down to the exhibit hall, there's a sign that is turned around and facing the opposite direction. I slap it on the back of that so everyone coming off the skywalk can see it. I slap one on a bench that's near one of the panel spaces. If somebody took one of those, congratulations, you got a Casey Mongelo chill chuck doodle. Time is still passing. And then, at 4:30 p.m. on the first day of the convention, the con announces Casey is there on Instagram. Not only that, the first word of the announcement that Casey is there says, "Surprise!" The con had been negotiating this for over a month. They knew that Casey was going to be there, and they waited that long to announce it. We are coming back to the autograph booth, or maybe we had just been like wandering around the exhibit space for a little bit because it was dead. And we're also noticing that there are some other booths that don't really make sense to see at an anime convention. We're going down this one aisle, and suddenly we pass Renewal by Anderson, who has a table. That's a window place, by the way. Like windows in your house.
Renewal by Anderson, we love our new windows.
And then a few tables down from them, we pass AT&T Fiber. credit to the AT&T Fiber people. They had like a bunch of anime stickers and shit to give away for their booth, so they at least were aware of what they were getting into and ways they could possibly get people to pay attention to them. Then we go through another aisle, and suddenly we walk past a booth for the U.S. Air Force. At one point, we wandered back into the JW Marriott. The way this works for this part of the convention is they had one floor, which had main events and some workshops on it, and then a floor above that is where they have like a cosplay meetup, some like workshop space, a couple panel rooms, and then they have this one big ballroom space that you have to walk a decent distance to. You go into this ballroom space, and you immediately see Artist Alley, which is like 4 rows of booths, and there is actually some decent stuff there. Behind that is a bunch of tables, one of which is marked as a cosplay meetup space. But this cosplay meetup space is sandwiched between Artist Alley and the gaming space, which is like 3 rows of tables with some consoles on them. And then off to the left of that is a kind of random selection of arcade games. There was a lot of open floor space that they just weren't utilizing. I don't know if it's that they had a limited selection of machines or what. But then, to the right of the tables of console games, they shoved all the cosplay guests onto that wall. Just into the corner. And I'm like, why the fuck are they here and not with the exhibit hall space with the other people who were invited? Ugh. Here's another thing. Because Casey was kind of a last minute addition, they weren't actually committed to any panels. But at this event, there was supposed to be a Monster Hunter panel. For that Monster Hunter panel, the only person they had there that was like officially going to be part of it was Kristen McGuire, who is I'm blanking on her name, the blacksmith in Wilds. Something else that staff is supposed to like do is check in for guests who are supposed to be on panels so that they can, you know, get to them in plenty of time. But nobody was doing that for most of the guests. Like 5 minutes after this Monster Hunter panel is supposed to start, someone comes by our desk with Kristen McGuire and is like, hey, there's a Monster Hunter panel in 5 minutes ago. Would you be willing to hop in on that? And we're like, oh, hold on, we weren't committed to anything like that. And we're like, I mean, I guess we could go down there with Kristen. And we did, and there was no one at the panel. By the way, I will note, even though Casey was announced through the socials for Weebcon Indy, they didn't really update much of anything else. There's a Weebcon Indy app that you're supposed to be able to use to like navigate around, even though the map is like very vague and only loosely helpful. They also have a guest list on the app, and the guest list was not updated. There were people who were on the guest list who had canceled and weren't appearing, but they were still showing up on it, and it was never updated to include Casey. So we just say, screw it, I guess we'll go back to the table and hope someone stops by. And I remember, like, there were some optimistic projections for attendance for this event, like being in the high thousands, like 8,000, 9,000, possibly 10,000. It was dead on Friday. I've never heard an exhibit hall / dealer space or a convention that was this quiet at 6 p.m. on a Friday. I mean, there were some people in the autograph section who had fairly consistent lines. Like, Ray Chase, with his scheduling stuff, usually had an okay line for himself when he was there. Steve Bloom was there. He had a fairly consistent line. Christina V was also there. She was kind of on and off, but more often than not, when I looked at her setup, she had someone that wanted to get something signed. But there were like north of 50 voice actor guests here. And for a first time event, that is just way too much. That is just spreading everything so thin. Although there was one thing that I had going for me at this event, personally, which was I wore the Salad Fingers shirt again. It's become a convention staple at this point. And I mentioned the Salad Fingers shirt here because at one point, Ray Chase looks over at me, and he looks at my shirt, and he does not say, "Is that a Salad Fingers shirt?" He specifically recognizes it as a David Firth shirt. That kind of blew my mind because it's very specifically referencing the character, but he's apparently so familiar with it that he just knows who makes that stuff. And in fact, later on, we were wandering around and we stopped by the person who had like the body pillow booth because they had some other stuff that wasn't body pillows. And one of them recognized the shirt. So I just kind of like half-assed a Salad Fingers impression. They were like, "Wait, you're not David Firth, are you?" I didn't think the impression was that good, but no. I told them I wasn't David Firth. I'm not British enough to be David Firth. So we eventually found out where the green room space was. You would expect the green room space / break space to be kind of close to where autographs are. That is not what they did. The green room, from the exhibit hall, you have to go out of the convention center, across the 2 skywalks, up 1 floor, and then down this long-ass hallway to get to this room that has like 7 tables in it, and there's supposed to be food on some tables, but there's nothing. When we got there, it was mainly just water and coffee that you could get. And I was so hungry at that point that like I took a honey packet that was supposed to be used for the coffee and then just like used one of those wooden stirrers to like scoop it into my mouth. We ended up heading back to the dealer space, and I did get something from one of the vendors there because I am a total sucker for those little rando boxes of Monster Hunter figures. I got one for I can't remember if it was Rise, and then I got another one that wasn't for the monsters themselves. It was for just random items. So I walked away with a Rathalos figure and a well done steak figure. Something else I got while I was there was there weren't really a lot of options for video games there. But there was one person who had like a few shelves with a certain selection of games. And I'm going through the PS1 games, and there's a tall box copy of ESPN Extreme Games. Now, I've only ever played a demo of that. But I remember being kind of into it when I played it, but then I just never followed up on it. Casey, however, has played all of the ESPN Extreme games. Casey kind of talks me into getting that copy of it. So we pretty much called it for the day. And we are going back to the hotel. We're figuring, I mean, Rallies was fine before, and it's relatively cheap. Let's just DoorDash that again. There's also a message Casey gets, and it's from Faye Miata, who apparently has like some extra chicken that they got from a place that they got food from. So we're just sitting in the lobby for a bit with Faye Miata and just nibbling on this chicken as we are waiting for DoorDash to show up with the Rallies order. So eventually the DoorDash delivery person does get near the hotel, and we're getting up to like try and figure out where they're going to come in and drop things off. As this is happening, we're noticing like an unusually high amount of bougie people in the lobby. Like people who have suits and dresses, and I don't think we ever figured out why they were all there. We're going back to the elevators as we've gotten the Rallies and we're heading back up to our room. And ahead of us, there's one guy and one lady, and there's a lady between them. The lady between them has her arms over the shoulders of the other people and is really wobbly on her feet. Like they're pretty much dragging her to the elevator. She is super drunk. There's really no ending to that part of the story. It's just, wow, what a night she had. We get back up to the room, we get the order unpacked, and we realize Rally's fucked up. We got the exact same order that we did before. And, number one, the fries were, like, kind of soggy and limp both times, so, yeah, we just weren't going to do that anymore. And two, we asked for 2 cherry cokes. They sent us 2 Hawaiian punches. I don't know how that mistake was made, but it was made. South Park isn't on at the time. Instead, they're just showing a bunch of, like, Family Guy. We're going through, like, the summary of the episodes just to see, like, if they're later Family Guy or early Family Guy. And we get to one episode, which the description for it is just Stewie designs a... And that's it. And that will take us into Saturday. Saturday, we'd heard that, like, the one-day badges for that day had sold out. Like, they were at capacity. And we were like, I mean, given how Friday looked, I'm not optimistic. This was looking to be, based on just Friday, an event where most people would have lost money for coming out to do it. There was one actor who was, like, trying to keep morale up among people to varying degrees of success. We'd heard that they'd made some improvement, and in fact, at one point there was a person on staff who was basically going around and apologizing to everybody for how things had started. So we walk in to the exhibit hall for the next day. We notice that a bunch of people who didn't have stuff on the floor before now had these, like, red taped lines. That said, they still didn't quite have that for everybody. Casey basically had a lane put up for them, but no actual lines. So it was just a big empty space in between them. Also, everyone who was a guest there had a, like, custom-made banner for that event, except Casey. I mean, Casey brought their own banner that they usually hang for these things, but even so, it was just another thing on top of the many other things to be miffed about with how the show was going. So we notice that there's nothing on the floor for Casey's line, but we also notice there is a roll of tape sitting on one of the tables next to us. And I see this, and I look at the open space, and I say, you know what? Let's at least try to have a little fun with this. So I grab the tape, and rather than taping out lines, I use the tape to spell out the words, "this way." And then I have an arrow pointing at the words "this way," and then a giant arrow pointing toward the table. And then where Casey would be sitting, I have the word "hi," and then a smiley face. Look, if they didn't want me to do that with it, they shouldn't have let the tape out. And in fact, I was not the only one who was doing unorthodox things with the tape. Also, by this point, they had quote-unquote fixed Ray Chase's sign. It was no longer leaning against his autograph table. It was, in fact, like, on the floor, a few feet out from his table, but they had to, like, stick the beam through the back of a chair just to get it to stand up and not fall over the moment, like, a gust of wind hit it. So we're walking around at one point and encounter another person who may or may not have been a guest there. And the first thing they do is they have this big smile and they say, "Did you hear about the shit show behind the scenes?" Because apparently there was a lot going on. Not the least of which being, for Friday initially, some of the guests who were supposed to be doing autograph signings just did not have tables. So certain like guests who are doing signings will say, like in their contract or as part of the deal, that they have either one autograph table or two autograph tables, depending how much stuff they have to sell. Some guests who had two autograph tables initially only had one, and the event solution was to just give them other people's tables so that they would have two. Then they had trouble like actually acquiring more tables so that these other guests would have something to work with. And on top of all of that, there was some issue with like a massive amount of volunteers either not showing up or pulling out. So they were just pulling in volunteers from wherever they possibly could get them. Because you would see some people who were wearing just straight up Weebcon Indy gear, and then you'd see other people who were wearing like high visibility construction vests, and generally pointing people in certain directions. And then there was the green room thing, because I mentioned before, like we went up to the green room before and there wasn't really any food. Like there were supposed to be prepared meals at certain times. And there was another massive miscommunication about that, which I will come back to later. Also, it is early Saturday, so second day of the convention. The app is still not showing Casey, and it is still showing guests who had canceled and wouldn't be appearing. Also on Saturday, at 9 a.m., they announced one of the cosplay guests who was there, who had already been there for the first day. There is a silver lining to all of this. Casey and I are working the table Saturday. Saturday is better than Friday. I will say that. It was better than Friday. There were more people there. That said, I also heard that allegedly they ran out of Saturday badges and were giving people wristbands instead. But the silver lining to this day is when there's a lull, we look across the way and we see someone is talking to Patio Enclosures guy. I don't know if that happened at all on Friday, but it finally happened on Saturday. Also, during the lull, we're watching the custodial staff going around to, like, just pick up stuff on the floor or, like, check on trash cans, see if they need to be dumped out. And at this point, we start creating our own, like, custodial staff lore for a potential animated series or fighting game or something. Because we see this guy come up to the trash can that's, like, almost in front of us. And he kind of looks inside, and then he, like, taps the top of it with his hand, like that. And I'm just leaning over to Casey and going, oh my god, that is a fantastic custodial staff cosplay. And look, he even did the patented hammer fist technique that he finally learns in episode 12. It's not the perfect cosplay, though. He didn't follow it up with the low feint kick to the trash can. The input for that, I think, is quarter circle back and then diagonal down forward light kick. And this just keeps building as the weekend goes on. We probably could write a pilot for this if we really wanted to. It got that absurd. We get word about when food is supposed to show up in the green room. And we say, okay, we're going to be there when the food shows up. We're not going to miss out again like last time. Apparently everybody had the same idea. Because we get up to the green room and it is packed. There are 7 tables in there and 6 of them are full. And one of them already has like a Japanese guest and their interpreter sitting at the table with them. We just kind of try to scrape together whatever we can and go to sit at that last table. And we're like across the way from the Japanese guest. It was really chaotic. And not only that, they ran out of plates. Like there were actual like proper porcelain plates. They ran out. So they had to run off and then grab some paper plates that people could use until they got more clean plates into that room. And that's where we learned part of the green room fiasco is that they completely miscommunicated how many people food would have to be prepared for. There were, I think, in the mid-50s of voice actor guests. slash cosplay guests slash whatever. Whoever was communicating how much food to make, they said to make food for 37 people. So this caused kind of a scramble. I mean, Casey basically had a plate of rice. I was kind of in the same boat. Also, there were 7 tables of people in this room eating, and there's only 1 trash can. I was having water because, I mean, there was a fridge there, but they didn't really have any drinks in it. Anyway, positive. Because this convention is so close to where I live, my wife was able to tag along for like a day and a half of it. So she arrives about midway through the afternoon on Saturday, and she has a couple of goals. One of which wound up being unattainable just because it was way too expensive. But she has a couple of things that she wants to get signed. Number 1, she has some Initial D shoes. And the person who voiced Itsuki in the Initial D anime was a guest there. And she did get one of her shoes signed. Another thing, another person who was there was, I hope I don't screw up her name, Mary Elizabeth McGlynn. She's known for a few things. Like, one of the things that was advertised the most for her was Koto Kusanagi from Ghost in the Shell. But the thing that Tiger, my wife, knows her for is doing the vocals for a bunch of tracks for various Silent Hill games. And I was like, well, I have the soundtrack for Silent Hill 3 with me. And she's like, oh shit, that's perfect. And we like take it with us, and she goes to get it signed. Suddenly, Tiger comes back to the booth with me, and right beside her is Mary Elizabeth McGlynn. Because not only did she get it signed, she got a photo. Future me, for when I'm doing the YouTube cut of this, this is where you put in the photo of me looking awkward next to Mary Elizabeth McGlynn. A band I was in did a cover of one of the songs that she provided vocals for. So that was actually kind of a cool moment. So Saturday is still progressing, and I'm still thinking just how out of place that patio enclosures booth is next to the body pillow place and the Prince place. But during a lull, the guy who's running the patio enclosures booth comes over to our table, and he goes up to Casey and he asks, hey, do you know anything about the Chainsaw Man movie? Like, where that's at, when that's going to come out? So, I guess it was fortunate for this guy that he's actually into that kind of thing. And he wasn't just some random dude who got stranded in an anime convention trying to run this patio enclosures booth. So in the end, Saturday is a notable improvement over Friday in terms of booths. And not just for Casey, but for pretty much everybody. Afterward, we all end up going to dinner just at this sports bar / restaurant place attached to the hotel called High Velocity. We were initially just there to meet up with like a couple people, so it was like this one table of 4. But as time was going on, more and more and more people kept coming over to this table, so we had like 9 people sitting around this table meant for 4. Emmy Lowe was there. She was in like Cyberpunk Edge Runners and Solo Leveling. Ryan was there. Risa May was there. Risa's in like Honky Star Rail and Zero Zen Zones. Also Unicorn Overlord. One of the agents joins. Keith Silverstein sits down with us. I didn't realize this until after we got home from the convention, but he's King Vitus in Crit Master. I fucking love King Vitus. I wish I knew that beforehand. People are starting to order things. A lot of people are just getting drinks, but Casey and I see this thing for like pretzels. And we're like, you know what, let's split that. And it's not a traditional pretzel. It's like pretzel sticks. It's basically like less so pretzel and more so bread with a pretzel texture over it. And with these pretzel sticks things comes a little container of beer cheese. Guess what happens next?
Animal.
But I did.
But they didn't either.
Scott.
So
Yeah, that's
I
true.
woke them
That's
up.
true. That's
She said the
There
D
is
Is that
word.
a threat or a promise?
Where they were based, the name.
I saw
Yeah,
that.
the
Yes.
names are based off of like poems and novels.
And you're okay if I do that?
So
I don't care.
Alice in Wonderland.
But she
Alright.
said the D. She said the D word.
Oh, that is so
She said the D
cool.
word.
And they have a deal
The
with
D word?
guests and
How was
vendors.
the Alice in Wonderland?
No, but everyone's used to
All
it.
amazing. Are we going through again?
Oh, that's our.
Yeah, so
Stuff
I think
for-
I
tried it. Okay, okay.
But like for the
You are an
guests
animal.
and vendors, it's buy three get two free.
Oh. You are
Did
absolutely
you get
free.
some free too? I only bought 2 of them.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But what about the rest of the cheese? What are you dipping the pretzels in then?
Oh, you
Are you drinking the cheese?
Wow. I like
This is not good.
think it was cool for fun. That's crazy.
We're gonna have to check in on you later tonight or tomorrow.
Yep, I shot it in front of all of these other voice friends of Casey's. And my wife. So we just get like really lost in conversation. They were all really chill people. Finally, we do eventually end up like leaving there, going back to the room, and I plugged the PS4 in for a little bit, just to have some cheap laughs by showing Casey Shaq Fu Legend Reborn, and the thing that they hated even more than that, Skater XL. I could hear the anger in their voice rising, because they weren't actually playing it. I was just like demoing it for them, and they were like, they just got so pissed at that game. And I can't really blame them. It's like a meandering zombie noise soundtrack, really awkward controls, and just this soulless skater that keeps going into the fetal position and clipping into walls, and sometimes just falling over from the slightest of contact at low speed. So we go from that back to the PS2. For those who don't know, I've been playing through Gran Turismo 4 with my wife on stream, and I brought Gran Turismo 4 and the memory card that had our data on it. We played that for a little bit, although it wound up being less so doing races in Gran Turismo 4 so much as my wife and Casey ogling the cars in Gran Turismo 4. Doing a lot of window shopping and wishful thinking. And from there was something that I brought to the event, and it was a gift. It was something that my wife got and then wrapped up, and I told Casey, you're not allowed to open this until Tiger gets here. Well, Tiger's there, so it's time for Casey to unwrap this thing that she got for him.
Is it what's left of Jerry's pride?
Sure.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Do I just rip it open?
Yeah, you can rip it right open. Go ahead.
I'm trying to be all like delicate and shit. I'm trying to be delicate. Ford fucking GT90. I can tell just by the tire. Get the fuck out of here.
I was at a
Get the fuck out of here, dude.
It was like a year ago.
And yeah, Casey was really appreciative of that one. So late on Saturday, there was supposed to be a thunderstorm that was rolling in, which ultimately didn't happen. Although there was a storm that happened at some point earlier. During that, there was lightning. I don't know if it struck somewhere or if it was just a coincidence, but there was a power zap that happened. And like it caused my Switch, which was charging at the time, to like kick on. And apparently, I don't know if this was related to that at all or not. It probably wasn't. There was something else that was going on with all of the guests at the JW Marriott. That thing was people being double or triple charged for their rooms. And this was something that was happening to attendees, the guests, volunteers, con staff. So the people at the JW Marriott were scrambling to try and deal with all these different cases of people being overcharged. Remember that for later. So we are now on Sunday. We're not sure why it happened, but there was someone who was a guest, voice actor guest, who had to leave early. I'm not going to speculate on the reason why. It could have been a health thing. There might have been an emergency. I don't know. So for Sunday, we are on our way to the event space. We're going through the skywalk, and I look up, and I realize there's a water leak in the skywalk. Few things are going right. We get into the exhibit hall space, and we're passing some of the other autograph booths, and someone else got creative with the yellow tape that was just laying around, and made a hopscotch space out in front of the autograph booths. In case you're like, oh, damn it, we should have done that leading up to our table. So I will say this, there was a surprising amount of people who were there that just had Sunday badges. I don't know why. Maybe it was like a late word of mouth thing and people were just finding out about it later and going the one day they could. Not sure. Sunday's going along, and then we eventually take a break and we decide to head toward the Artist Alley Gaming cosplay meetup, cosplay guest clusterfuck area. And on the way, I haven't been paying attention to the signs, but apparently people just not knowing where the Artist Alley space was a bit of a problem, I'm guessing, because there was a properly printed sign for the event, and then above it was a written by hand sign saying Artist Alley, this way. Although even the printed signs weren't perfect, because we're walking past one and I noticed one that it advertised the Preformance space. So we're going through Artist Alley, and I wish I had more money. Not just because there were things I saw that I liked, but also because some of the voice actors in the main exhibit hall space were really going through it. I can only imagine how dire things might have been for some of the vendors in there. That said, we did walk past this one booth, Tiger and I, and sitting, kind of toward the back of their table, is a handbag. This handbag is shaped like a Mazda Miata, the car that my wife drives. And my wife has this Pavlov's dog response to any time she sees a Miata or a picture of a Miata or something Miata themed. So she sees this and goes, Miata! And long story short, she now owns the handbag shaped like a Miata. She also owns a pair of earrings shaped like Jack Frost from Shin Megami Tensei. Iho. So we actually decided to, go into the game room area, check out what's there. And, there's the usual suspects for this kind of thing. Most game rooms that I see now will have the Dance Evolution, not motion capture, motion detection dance kind of game. Sound Voltex. There was a DDR machine. They had Virtual on, which I was actually kind of happy about. They had a Gundam game, a couple of old arcade games. There was a Persona fighting game. It was overall just kind of a limited selection. They had a car racing game, but they did not have Initial D, which was weird, because they had a couple of guests there who had done stuff with Initial D. So aside from it being a con staple, it just would have made sense for at least one of the Initial D machines to be there. But after we're done dicking around with that space and buying a couple of things, we head back across the skywalks, and as we are on the escalator, going back down towards the exhibit hall entrance, I overhear this person in cosplay in front of us talking about the cosplay contest, which I completely missed. I don't think I went to the main event area once. So I overhear them on the escalator, and they were supposed to be in the contest, and they had a prejudging appointment, which the con scheduled them to go through prejudging at the same time that they were hosting a panel. Not sure how that happened. So I mentioned before that the NBA Finals were going on and Indiana was one of the teams in it. So we're going on the skywalk back toward the JW Marriott. And there's a point where you can see, like, the outside, like, front face of the building. And I'm looking up, because there are some dudes who are putting a decal on the side of the building. And at first we couldn't tell what it was. We could tell later, once, like, more of the lettering had been put on. It was a picture of the Larry O'Brien Trophy, the NBA Finals graphic, and the slogan, "Yes, Cers," which is, like, the playoff rallying cry for the Indiana Pacers. And in fact, there were a number of attendees who were wandering around the convention space who were wearing, like, Pacers hats, Pacers jerseys, and I hope the Pacers win. I know the odds are against them, but I hope the Pacers win. So anyway, we were heading back to the Marriott so we could go to the green room. And there was food, but there was no trash can. But while we're up there, we end up chatting with Jesse James Grell for a bit. Again, cool person. We do that. We head back down to autographs for, like, the final push. And at one point, a person comes up to the table and mentions the ship to Casey. The ship is one of the earliest things that Casey worked on. Not just doing voice work, but also helping with, like, the coding of the game. And, like, playtesting and stuff like that. And this person had also apparently worked in some capacity with Volition, I think he said. And that led into a conversation about Saints Row. This entire conversation with this one guy goes on for over 30 minutes. Like, it was an interesting conversation and I didn't want to interrupt. But at the same time, like halfway through it, there were other people who walked up who were looking to get stuff signed. And, like, the reason I didn't say anything, or, like, say, can we wrap it up, is because those people were also getting engrossed in the conversation that was going on. But eventually, that wraps up. The capper for the day was a Neon Genesis Evangelion cosplay group shows up. And they are going to get some group photos with Ryan and Casey. And Ray Chase had packed up, but he was still there. So he was going to, like, participate in the group shots as well. If I remember correctly, there was, like, 7 cosplayers. 6 or 7. There wasn't a Gendo, but there was Shinji, Asuka, Ray, I think a Masato, and a couple other characters that I know are from the show, but I don't remember their names. So they all take part in that. In fact, I remember at one point, Ray Chase, I think this was during a Sunday? No, it was a Friday or Saturday signing, where at one point he does, like, make a Gendo reference over to Casey. He was like, "I'm proud of you, son. I'm not playing into the memes." So that mini photo shoot happens. Oh, that was my elbows. Ow. So we are all finally wrapping up. Like, convention's done. There were, in fact, some vendors who just packed it up early. But we start, like, putting the prints away. Casey picks up this envelope thing that some of the prints are supposed to go in. And what should fall out of that envelope but one of the small prints of the Chilchuck feet pics. And this spooks the shit out of both of us, because we're like, where did that come? We sold out of those. Where the fuck did this one come from? This happens, by the way, there was this Chilchuck cosplayer that we kept seeing throughout the weekend, and they had stopped by just to say, like, one last thank you and goodbye, and of course this happens directly in front of them. So we are trying to figure out food options. One of Casey's buddies says they're going to this place called Fat Dan's. It's like a burger deli sort of place. It's like a mile or two away. So my wife, who has been plotting for a while how to get Casey to ride in their Miata. Says, oh, I can take us there. I mean, like, there were other people who were going in a different car, but we were going to take 3 people in the Miata. It's a 2-seater car. So, what we end up doing is, my wife drives. Obviously, it's her car. I'm sitting in the passenger seat and Casey is in my lap. It was very cramped. The Miata became a clown car for this short little ride. The whole time we're riding over there, we're going, please don't let cops see us. Please don't let cops see us. Please don't let cops see us. I mean, there were other people who saw us and, like, gave us weird looks like, what the fuck? Fortunately, no cops. We let Casey out early, and then we, my wife and I, go out to find a place to park, and parking in this, like, little district where this deli burger place is, along with a couple other restaurants and shops, total nightmare. There is not enough parking for anyone. So we do eventually manage to find a place to park and walk over to Fat Dan's. So Casey's there, obviously, but aside from us 3, it's an agent who was working with some of the people there. There was Henry Schrader, who he's in Genshin, and he's, I think, the bear character in Zenzone Zoom. And also with them was Philip Reich. He was Giorno in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. He's done a bunch of Bethesda stuff. And another thing I didn't realize until much later, he was the excitable A-lister in Monster Hunter World. We all sit down at Fat Dan's, and it's basically like a sports bar type place. There are a bunch of people there in Pacers gear. Like, the staff is wearing Pacers gear. We're just, like, BSing around until the food comes. And conversation ends up settling on the adoring fan from Elder Scrolls Oblivion. And I can't remember how we got onto this, but it turned into people going around the table doing the voice of, like, I know that there was an adoring fan cosplayer at Weebcon Indy, but somehow our conversation turns into taking a bunch of songs from mostly the 90s and doing an adoring fan cover of them. It was like we were doing a greatest hits album. I think we wound up calling it Adoring the 90s. And that just became like a recurring joke for the next several hours. When they finally do serve the food at this place, they don't have like a tray table or a giant waiting plate for it. What they do is they have this huge ass sheet of butcher paper, carry everything for one table out, and then just slam it down on the table. And I will say this, oh my god, you could see through his face. Food? Pretty damn good. I got a burger that was like glazed in teriyaki and covered in Swiss. Would recommend. Like, I'm somewhat confident in this, but I don't want to commit to it. I think one of the guests who was in our little group was local to the area, because he also wound up driving one of the cars to get back toward the, like, hotel. So he was like, I keep telling people, like, Fat Dan's does not disappoint. And according to Tiger, best damn Cajun chicken sandwich. From there, Tiger had actually packed their stuff up in the Miata when they, like, initially went to Fat Dan's. So they just left straight from there with great difficulty. I had to kind of help direct traffic for them to be able to get out. And there was one person who very politely created space for Tiger to be able to pull out. Also, according to Tiger, they were supposed to be home by 10:30 p.m., but because of a 14-mile line of construction, did not get home until 11:15. And it would have been later if not for taking a detour via Dayton. Now, the thing is, when Tiger got their car out for Fat Dan's, they had to get it out of the JW Marriott parking garage. We knew going into this that the parking expenses were going to suck. Because, like, the rate given on the website was $59 per night. Tiger had parked there for one night, so we're like, it's gonna hurt, but okay, $59, we can deal with that. We go to leave the garage, the charge is $100. And we're all going, the fuck? One of the first things Casey and I do when we get back is go to the front desk with the receipt for the parking charge and going, what is this? How what's the math on this? What happened? So we present this to a front desk employee, who then presents it to a manager, who then presents it to some person who presents themselves as the parking specialist for the JW Marriott. Questionable title, as you're about to see. We present this ticket, we explain the situation, well, receipt, I should say. And he's going, the math on that doesn't really add up. And then he goes away for a bit, comes back, and says, well, actually, given the time that the vehicle arrived versus when it left, and it was in the garage for a total of, I think, 1 day and then an hour or two. And he's like, okay, the math actually makes perfect sense. That's what you're supposed to be charged. And we're like, no, it doesn't. You have advertised rates on your site for this, and doesn't mention anything about, like, it just goes into this really long conversation. So at one point he goes, is this car tied to a room? And we're like, no, because it was explained when checking in that we didn't have to tie a car to the room. And he's like, well, you have to tie the car to the room. And we, like, say the specific employee who said that we didn't have to tie it to the room, he goes away again. And, like, we're starting to get real pissed about this. I'm glossing over a lot of details in this, because a lot of it is circling back over the same details over and over and over. And at one point, the dude claims that when Casey initially got there and got their room keys, they didn't check in. How? And at one point, this dude comes back and is like, okay, we've rectified this, so the proper charge is now showing on the card. And we're like, wait a minute, the charge was already on the card. What are you... And he's like, this ticket said that you were supposed to get charged. We're like, it's not a ticket, it's a receipt. How are you the parking specialist? This goes on for so fucking long. But eventually, it does get worked out that, yes, it was supposed to be a one-night charge, and it is just going to cost the $59. Because at one point, they were like, well, are you suggesting that you shouldn't pay this? And we're like, we're not suggesting that we don't pay anything. We're suggesting that we pay the advertised rate. But anyway, much drinking ensued after that. We were at the High Velocity Sports Bar again. It was like me, Casey, an agent, and Philip was there too. And we just got so lost in conversation. I mean, I wasn't drinking at all. And conversation keeps bouncing from one thing to the other. And so much time goes by that in the middle of a conversation, we notice the lights dim and then suddenly get really bright. And we all look up and look around, and there is practically no one left in the bar/restaurant space. And we look at the clock and realize it's 5 minutes to midnight. So we're like, oh shit. Yeah, we should probably, get out of here, go to sleep. Because in Casey's case, they had a flight to catch that was pretty early in the morning. They would have to catch like a 6 a.m. shuttle. And because of that, based on the whole parking situation that we had earlier, I had another car that had been sitting in the garage for like 3 or 4 days. So I'm wondering what's going to happen when I try to leave the garage. So I'm like, you know what? Your shuttle is at 6. I am going to wake up and get down to my car around 5:30 in the morning. just in case any more shit happens. So we go back up to the room and get like 4 hours of sleep, maybe. And remember the storm that was predicted but never showed up? Apparently it decided to show up when we were all trying to leave. So I head down to my car. And I'm going to try and... this was the plan. We were going to have me use the room key. Because there's like a place where you can tap that. And the parking fee will go to the card used for the room. So I head down. I pull up to the gate. I tap the room key. And it says processing, please wait. So I wait. And I wait. And I wait. And wait. And wait. And wait. Okay, long story, but after a very long time, it says canceled. And I can't leave the garage. So I'm messaging Casey back. And Casey is there, and one of their agent contacts is there. We're all like, oh god, really? So more conversations ensue with the front desk. I'm using like the help button thing to keep in contact with them. And eventually the person just says, 1 second, I'm going to let you out. Because they were moving the charge to the room card. I don't know if it's because we were checking out at the same time that it caused some weird mix-up where the card just wouldn't do anything, but I do eventually get out of the garage. And the shuttle is just a little bit behind, so I like pull up to the front. There were already a shit ton of taxis out in front of the hotel because a bunch of the Japanese guests were also getting ready to leave around the same time. But we did have time to say one final goodbye. And then I drive back home through a bunch of rain. Once I got home, I was just so tired and exhausted from the entire weekend. I fell asleep, woke up a few hours later, fell asleep again, and now I'm here. And that, I guess, was Weebcon Indy.